Hi guys, my name is Ashley from bluehillglass.com, and today I'm going to teach you how to create this beautiful red stained glass cardinal using our Precut kit. When you purchase this Precut kit, you get 11 pieces of perfectly cut and ground stained glass. We also include a PDF download of our pattern and a materials list to help you get all the tools you need to start this project. So the first step to make my cardinal is to get some copper foil tape. I'm using 7/32 black line foil since I have some transparent glass and I'm going back with some black patina later. So the first step is you want to start your foil on an inside edge, either here or here, where your foil will touch another piece of glass. The reason that you're doing this is to make sure that the end seam is not on the outside edge where you'll be adding some solder and it will be a little bit vulnerable there and it may kind of pull away. So I start on an inside edge. I'm going to position the tape so that there's an equal amount on either side of the glass. Then I'm going to use my finger to guide it. When I get back to where I started, I'm going to leave about a 1/4 inch overhang, rip it off with my finger, and then pinch it down on all the sides. When you're ready to push down the foil on a curvy piece like this, here's a helpful tip. Take your thumb and on the front side of the glass, push your thumb towards the glass like this. This is going to help prevent the glass from ripping, especially in those deep curves. And remember, if you mess up, you can always go back, rip it off, and try again. That thumb trick works well for small pieces as well, but you might have to use your little finger. So your foil should look like this on either side, an equal amount. Once you finish foiling all your pieces, it's time to burnish them. I have this very simple $3 burnisher. I'm going to scrape it along all of the outside edges. Then I'm going to take the edge of it right here and I'm going to rub it along all the front and the back. Once I do that, my foil is pressed down nice and snug. And I'll continue to do that for all of my pieces. Now that all of my pieces have been burnished, I'm ready to start soldering. Okay, to begin soldering our cardinal, you first need to dip your brush in your flux and brush it on all the points where your glass meets. You need to do this really lightly. If you do slide the glass out of place, you can always push it back. Next, I'm going to get my lead solder. I have my iron heated up to about 410, but it really depends on your iron and the temperature of the room you're in. I'm going to put a small amount of solder to connect all the pieces of glass together, so on those points where I added my flux. If your solder isn't flowing smoothly, you probably have the temperature down too low, so turn your iron up a notch and see if it starts to melt quicker. After you've joined all the pieces together, you should be able to slide your piece around and the pieces do not move out of place. Now I'm going to tin the outside edge so I get a little bit of flux on my brush and I brush it along that entire outside edge. Then I take my solder, grab a small amount with the tip of my iron, and I'm going to drag it to tin that outside edge. Tinning just means I'm putting a small amount. I'm not trying to build it up like a bead on a lead line, just dragging a very tiny bit around. If I start to get thin, I'll just grab some more, but also I can use what's already on there. Like here, I already have a blob there, so I don't need to add more. I can just grab it and pull it away so I can cover the rest of the outside edge. I'm going to push my lead solder into the tip of my iron onto the side as I drag it along these lead lines. Now, if it looks a little bumpy or I don't think it's smooth enough, I can do a up and down motion and I can flatten it. It's best to fix things as you go, so if there's something that's bumpy you don't like, go ahead and heat it up and smooth it while it's still hot before you've moved on to another spot. Our goal with our lead lines is a smooth, round bead. When you start a new lead line, you want to brush it with a little bit of flux before you get started. If you notice that your bead is not coming out like this and flowing smoothly, you'll either need to turn up the temp of your iron or you don't have enough flux. Those could be the two troubleshooting items. For example, this part has a bit of pitting here. It's not really that bad, but if you're a perfectionist like me, this is how you can fix it. Push your iron down and up towards the sky, parallel to the earth. As it cools, it's going to stay in that shape, and now we've lost that pitting that we had before. Now you're going to flip your piece over on the back. Be careful, it could still be really warm. You can take your pattern out at any point if you want to reuse it. I just usually like to print a new one when I start a new project, because the pattern will be super flat and I'll have a better outcome in my soldering. So right now I'm going to make 2 hooks for hanging. So I'm going to take my copper wire and some needle nose pliers and I'm going to twist the wire around into a loop shape. Now you can make these kind of like teardrops like I do, or you can make them more circular. It's really up to you. Now I'm going to take the hook that I just created and I'm going to place it on top of my lead line and kind of bend it to shape it to the lead line so that it fits in there and it's not going to be poking out of the glass. Next, I'm going to get some flux on my brush, use my pliers to grab my hook, swipe that line with my flux, and then I'm going to get a little bit on the tip of my iron, hold my hook in place along that line, and then I'm going to tack it down. And now I can actually go ahead and completely tack that in by grabbing a little bit off of the tip of my iron and putting it over top of that hook. If I work it too much, the hook can actually fall out. So if you've hit it a couple of times, just let it cool down for a couple minutes and come back to it if it's not perfectly smooth on the first couple passes. Okay, and now I'm going to put the other one in. This one I'm going to have to curve a little bit more and kind of bend it till I get it in the shape. It's a little trickier. You can use your pliers to help you bend it too if you're better with your pliers than your fingers. After I have it shaped to my lead line, I'm going to hold it with my pliers, brush on a little bit of flux, hold it in place with my pliers, and then grab a little bit of lead solder. Get it in there. I have a steady hand. And then I can tack it into place. It's okay that that loop is open a little bit right now. I'll close it in later. I can also use my pliers to make my wire sit more flat in the lead line if it's kind of bumped up. Next, I'm going to add a little bit more on top of that hook so that it blends in and it'll look smooth just like the rest of the lead lines. After my hooks are in place, I'm ready to add flux to the rest of the piece and go ahead and solder it. Push your lead solder wire into the edge of your tip and then pull and drag them together in order to add the solder into your seam. Remember that up and down motion that you can do if your solder is not smooth or bubbles out or anything like that. You just go down and back up. My Cardinal is almost done. I have the front and the back soldered. Now I need to do this outside edge. This part can be a bit tedious, so here's some little tips. First, you need a cloth to put over your hand to hold your piece while you're doing this step. It protects your hand from drips, and it also is a little insulator because the glass is going to get pretty hot. Go ahead and have your flux cup handy. Take your solder roll, wheel it out a little bit, and angle your roll up. You're going to put it over here in a spot where you can grab it easily. This is going to speed this up. Now, grab your piece and hold it with your cloth, making sure your hand is covered and you have a good grip on it. Now you want to turn the temperature of your iron down, where I started at 410, and that totally depends on your specific iron and your environment. So whatever temperature you were soldering at, turn it down just one notch. By turning the temperature down, the foil on the edge will not get so hot and you'll reduce the chance of it pulling away and peeling up. Now you're going to get a little bit of flux on your brush and lightly wipe it across the first edge. You've got your solder roll handy here where you can grab it easily. You're going to grab a small amount onto the tip of your iron. Next, you're going to hold your Cardinal wherever you're starting. I'm going to start here. It's going to be level to the ground. So this seam I'm working on is perfectly level to the ground. Then I'm going to take that little bit that's on my tip. I'm going to push down and pull up. And you see that drip there? That's why I have this towel, because you're going to drip a lot. If I did it well, then I'll have a nice little round bead right there on the edge. I can pick up those beads that fall off and reuse them. And then I'm going to tap down and up. And it takes about 2 to 3 seconds for that edge to cool enough that I can move it. If you put some on there and you move it too quickly, like that, then you'll see I'll get a blob right there. And I don't want that. I want it to be smooth. Then I just continue that motion. I can even fix mistakes I have just by gravity. And as I want to move around to a new seam, I'm going to turn it so that the next seam I'm working on is level to the ground. So this is how I'm going to continue going all the way around this piece, turning it so that the spot I want to solder is level, letting it cool a couple seconds, grab some more, and continue going around. If it looks like that, where I tap it and it doesn't really stick really well, I might need a little bit more flux. But you don't want to overdo it. You don't even really need to dip, just use what's on the brush for this part. When I get to a hook, I just hold it a little at an angle and push a little blob into that hook so that the hook's not only connected in the lead line, but it's also connected on the top, so I'm going to have a really good strong hold there. Just be patient with this part. It can be a little frustrating, and it definitely takes some practice to get it smooth like mine is. If the angle's getting a little funny, you can always flip it around and get a position that works better. The main goal here is to hold that area level long enough for it to cool so that you get a nice bead like this. Now going around curves can be a little bit more tedious. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer for it to cool down, and you won't be able to do as big of a seam as some spot that's flat or like a straight line. So just be patient with it. It can be frustrating, but it'll be worth it in the end. Some people don't take the time to do the nice rounded beaded edge like this, and they might just swipe it like this and kind of tin it. And if you're really struggling with this step, just go ahead and do that on your first piece. But if you want to continue to grow a little bit more, you might want to try and do this approach. Once I've completed soldering the edge all the way around, it's time to go back and check up for any little errors that I want to fix. So I would fix this hole here and here. I would also smooth out that bump right there so it's not a dot. And so I do this with every piece. I go through and inspect. Like here, I'm showing some copper foil tape, so I'm definitely going to add a little bit there. Don't expect to get it perfect on the first pass. Brush your flux on those spots that you're wanting to smooth out a little bit more. You can even use these beads that fell off while you were doing the edge. One thing to remember, which I didn't, turn the temperature of your iron back up so that your solder flows more smoothly. Taking the time to do these little touch-ups is just going to send your piece over the top as far as quality goes, and I think most people will really notice your eye for detail, and they'll appreciate the effort you put into making it look nice and smooth and professional. A lot of times areas like this where there's a lot of solder in one spot can get kind of bumpy, so you can even smooth those back out. They might take a little bit longer to cool because it's a lot more solder in one spot, and you might even have to do it a couple of times before you get it. Now my piece is done. I like to clean with quick clean, but use whatever method works for you, whatever you have on hand. I use a little non-scratch scrubby pad and really lightly just go over all my lead lines with that quick clean. The lead lines are going to go from dull to shiny like this. That's how you know you got it clean. Don't forget to do your outer edge. You want to make sure you pay close attention to where you placed your hooks, because you probably put a lot of flux right there, and I noticed that that's usually where the white oxidation occurs on stained glass, or the pieces I've made, is around the hooks. So I always try to make sure, just going forward, that I really pay attention to cleaning the hooks really well. After I've cleaned it, I'm going to take a paper towel and wipe off all that extra. You're going to see some black gunk, and that means you did clean it and you are doing good so far. Now I've got my Cardinal on a paper towel. You can leave it silver like this if you like, or you can add copper or black patina. I'm going to add black patina to this one, so I'm using some Novocan black patina. Just pour your patina in a cup and then go ahead and brush it on just like paint. Don't forget to get the outer edge and the back as well. Now I can wipe all that extra patina off with a paper towel. You don't want to let it sit too long because it can stain your glass. I like to use Mother's brand car wax, but any car wax that doesn't have rubbing compound in it will work just fine. Add some car wax to the paper towel, and then you're going to rub it all over very gently. You're not trying to wipe it away, you're trying to deposit it, and do the front and back and the sides. Now your piece is done, and you can put it in a spot to dry, and then we will buff it off and it'll be ready to add chain. You can use a soft cloth to buff off all the polish, and then you can add chain or twine, and this is the completed project you will end up with. Thank you so much for purchasing from bluehillglass.com, and always check back with us in the future for more stained glass kits, tips, and tutorials.